Hello, it's just me to start off with. I just want to make a very quick announcement before we get into the regularly scheduled podcast. I've recently been announced as a DMs Guild Herald, which basically means the DMs Guild have selected myself and 19 other fantastic people to kind of herald the good news of the fantastic people all involved in the DMs Guild and kind of surrounding kind of community. So what that kind of means is there is a special code. If I'll be on screen right now. I believe it's DMs Guild House 5. And you can use that for up to like 5% off any kind of purchases on the DMs Guild and Drive-Thru RPG of $5 or more. It would be a fantastic way to kind of help support the show. As well as I'm going to go out my way to kind of help highlight creators going around. But I just kind of wanted to draw attention to you and draw attention to it. And more importantly, thank you and all the listeners, because, you know, if it wasn't for people tuning in, I don't know if I would have got this opportunity. So thank you. And now back to the morning show. Hello and welcome to the Dungeon Masters Guild House. This is a weekly podcast in which I, your host, Matthew Whitby, sit down with people all across the tabletop, RPG, and surrounding space. And this week, I'm so chipper. I'm delighted to be joined by Chris Hopper. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, from the comfort of your very own porch.
From the comfort of my very own porch.
Nice. Now, how are we doing this afternoon?
We are excited to be here. I'm excited to be here, and looking forward to chatting.
Nice. Well, you know what? Let's again. I don't want to let your excitement dissipate as we have like a long rambly intro. Let's jump straight into it. So I guess for the people listening, then, what have you been making?
I've been on the Drive-Thru RPG and DMsGuild sphere for about a year and a half now. I made Saxon and Celt expansions for Realmwarp Media's Falling Camelot series. I've contributed to a bunch of collections. I'm including recently Spin, Truck and Bolt's Children Champions of the Fae, Monster Hunters Weekly, Marvelous Archetypes. Additionally, I do some side consulting. I do accessibility consulting for MCDM and for a couple of other magazines.
Nice. No, wow. No, again, an exciting mix. And I guess, again, with how kind of small this industry is, we're essentially project partners through the, Realmwarp Media, as well as it's always a few Children Champions of the Fae, as well as, the Camelot series.
Yep.
It's funny how I don't know how big it can all seem at some point, and then it's like, it's this person who kind of we've been kind of circling the same projects just through how we've been doing things.
Definitely solid Venn diagram. Yeah.
Yeah. Eventually, it just becomes a singular circle, given enough time. But that's just how these things go. Well, then, so I guess it's starting things off then. So with kind of only being like, a year and a bit. What was kind of like I was about to say, what was your call to action, to use like narrative tropes?
So that's actually a funny story. It was 2 years ago, last month, that we've had puppies. We have fecal puppies and we have puppies. And I'm up all night taking care of these dogs. And I'm a forever GM. I've been running games for 25 years. Mm-hmm. So I have a pretty solid backlog of content. And I'm talking to my friend and he's like, you can put this stuff online, right? And I'm like, what, like Reddit? He's like, no. And so he introduced me to it. And then a few months later, he wasn't actually involved with the community. He was just like, hey, this is a thing you should do. And so I browsed through it and I'm like, wow, these guys are amazing. How do I do that? It took another 6 months to figure out the how part. I revivified my Twitter and I got to trying to re-engage with the tabletop community through that route, and eventually found the DMs Guild Creators Discord and a couple of other projects early on that I got involved with and created, like, a stat block here or a little contribution there.
Yeah.
And then started putting together oh wow, there's a huge community of people here that we can all put things together, but we can also like soundboard and bounce off and develop these ideas. And so that shifted it from trying to figure this out on my own to finding and filling niches.
Interesting, because I guess I find it like, I guess like kind of one of my following up questions was going to be because as well, like on top of like sensitivity reading stuff, being like a writer, you also like you're a layout artist.
Yep.
So was it literally just like through virtue of like finding all these niches and just like, well, I can give that a go. That you've just kind of.
Yeah, I actually when I started, one of the first things I did, I worked with Valor, Mr. Valor. What is Mr. Valor's Twitter handle? Valor Map.
Yes, I also know them as just Val.
I started working with him doing a mini adventure a day because I wanted to write, because that writing outlet for me, that's an outlet. That's a thing that I get up in the morning, I do that. I have something I'm doing that day. And so the writing part was the hook. It was the engagement. It was the thing that brought me in. And then I've worked in graphic design. I've been graphic design adjacent for my day career now for about 15 years. And so I got to looking and realized that the layout portion is like, that's a whole different expression. So I love writing. I love creating memorable encounters. But in layout, I'm able to encounter everyone else's remarkable things and craft something that evokes that.
Yeah.
I really like the graphic design challenge of, hey y'all, we're going to hell this week, or or whatever, or drawing. I did Elise Cretel's Grecian themed one, and so lots of slab fonts, lots of like one of the early drafts actually had like crumbling mosaic tile, stuff like that. And so being able to create evocative imagery that feeds into that experience, not just for the players, but for the DM to kind of get that psyched, feeling going, really pulled me from, yeah, I'll write the occasional adventure to, yeah, this is what I do with all my free time now.
No, I was gonna say, because there is 100%, there is a real, like, yeah, you kind of phrase it best where there is a real art to layout. But I guess because it also like it's that interesting blend where like it like form and function. Just because at the end of the day, the words, again, you could do this lovely, very intricate background that makes, unfortunately, the words on the page unreadable, which would, again, on the art form, it's like, it's lovely. But then it's that balance. And then, again, dealing with those, again, text that kind of wants to go on the next page. And then it's like, okay, well, what do I do with this kind of floating text? How do we kind of nudge things about? It's definitely a balance. But I must admit, I think I agree with you in terms of like what RPG kind of creation as a whole, it does allow you to kind of wear many hats, and again, kind of having all those kind of different forms of like kind of expression that of like, okay, well, these are the words as written. How do we kind of make the kind of image we conjure in the mind as evocative as possible, and you finding the right art to kind of set the theme and kind of support that along the road. Do you? I guess no, interesting. And I wanted to ask as well. Do you kind of have you kind of maintained that kind of encounter writing like each day, or?
So I have not done each day because that was a very long month.
Yeah,
but I try to write a couple of weeks still. I keep a backlog, and I'm right now. My tabletop group rotates Dungeon Masters. We are very good about swapping out each campaign, and then we do one shots whenever the whole party can't make it. And so I get my GMing feed every couple of weeks through that. And that's, if I'm not lucky enough to be running something off the guild, then I'm running something that I made up 6 hours ago.
So actually, that brings up an interesting point, because when you talk about like when your friend kind of introduced you to the DMsGuild, it was kind of the idea of taking some of your like the stuff you'd been working on and kind of, what did you kind of follow that up in the end, or was it the cat that once you kind of found yourself in the community, you were like bouncing around from collaborations?
I have a little bit. I have 10 town encounters on Drive-Thru RPG that I did. It's not on the guild because it's just an OGL. It's actually, they're not social encounters, but they're town encounters. They're things that involve mostly commoners and, like, I think one of them's a magic user, but more social oriented. And so I put that on Drive-Thru early on. It's done dismally, but it's and some stuff like that. But mostly I have, like everyone, I'm sure I have a setting that hasn't yet evolved into its own book. And then I have, certainly in both Celts and Saxons, the two Realmwarp books, Memories of the Sea and Magic of the Celts. There's certainly a lot of that in there. The Melusine in Saxons was not that was a creature that I've reused 3 or 4 different ways because she evokes so many kind of primal situations. She sets a tone that you can shoehorn into. Hey, look, guys, don't get in the water; it will kill you. And so she came from some past stuff that I've run.
I must admit, it's kind of like I do like the process of like anytime you kind of join yourself to like a collaborative project and you kind of got a section to kind of write on. There are always those opportunities, like, you know what, like there's this thing I want to write, but it doesn't quite, it's not large enough to kind of fill like a void in one of your other projects, and it's like this is just perfect, and it's kind of that excuse to kind of go in and kind of I guess I guess satisfy that, like that tick that list like thing off your like ideas list to be like, I've finally done Goblin Canon. I don't need to worry about the Goblin Canon expansion pack. I just, this one little adventure has satisfied that weird need for Goblin Canon.
So excited! I made a courier class that's coming up in a book with Cam Day. He's basically a speedster. Like the whole class is built around gaining speed and gaining ways to disengage and dash and move around again without provoking opportunity attacks.
Yeah.
And that thing's been rolling around in my head for probably a year. Somebody beat me to it on Marvelous Archetypes. And so I was like, okay, it's going in here. It's for the bats. They're fat. They're nocturnal. They're couriers.
So I must admit, but I guess as well. So like I must admit, I don't know words. I'm saying I'm always impressed by people who are like, I want to tackle class design just because I feel safe within the subclass bubble. And I feel like to go that step beyond into kind of the class realm is always like scary. How do you find it?
Rogue subclass. That one is not a subclass design. Sorry, it's a rogue subclass. The class.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, I have done a class. I have an original class in Celts. I have 2 original classes in Celts actually. Boy, yeah, you're not wrong about the jump there.
I guess like what were some of the challenges that you kind of came across then?
I mean, at the core balance, right? Yeah. So both of those, and actually in Agartha, whenever we come back around to Agartha, Ryan kind of builds on it too. Both of the classes tackle totally different magic systems. And so one of them uses talismans and fetishes and little things like kind of like the Artificer UA did. But much more targeted. If you've played the Cypher system, they evoke the Cypher system concept of having this little one-shot thing, this little acorn that you throw, and it's going to explode into a thing of vines, but then you're going to have to infuse another acorn.
Yeah.
That type stuff. And so building a class that was versatile enough to stand on equal footing with wizards and casters, but unique enough that it felt like a totally different version of Magic.
Yeah.
That took a chunk. That was,
yeah. I think it's as well because I guess you kind of have to like the class itself does, it needs to kind of stand on its own, and then to kind of have enough like that, not all the flavors in the class that it's kind of supplemented by the subclasses as well. And the subclasses have to feel distinct. The class as a whole has to feel distinct from the, I don't know, 13 other. It's like a Herculean task. Yeah. But I guess again, I feel like my mind always feels like if I were to make a class, I feel like casters is a kind of good approach, just because by introducing kind of, I guess, their own kind of, again, you look at like casters and you kind of like, I clearly identify that like, okay, well, yeah, sorcerers, they've got their sorcery points. Warlocks, I guess they have their evocations and they only have 2 spells. Yeah, that's solid. Yeah, that'll be done. And then like wizards are kind of like the more kind of, traditional kind of caster. And then it's like, okay, well, what kind of resource do you kind of have to play around with? And I think that's probably, the one way I would kind of go about it. But then it is like, okay, well, how do you balance this? How do you create a new resource, and how do you kind of balance it that it's not too samey and it kind of all kind of stands out? And again, how does that kind of incorporate all the lore that you're kind of building with it as well?
Yeah, and that was the Celt book is so lore heavy. I mean, that's the thing about playing with a historic-ish, legend-ish setting, is that you have so much that the reader's already bringing in, right? I mean, I say Celts, and that's a word that we made up hundreds of years later anyway, but I say Celts, and that carries something that automatically pulls people into to certain expectations about what that caster class is going to do and how its relationship is going to be to the setting. Yeah. So, and they're the terrifying brand of druidic.
They're not so nice kind.
Yeah, they're not the hooray, let's wild shape. They're the, oh no, we're going to die horribly in the next.
Which, in fairness, I feel like you need both every now and then. I think, unfortunately, it's nice. It's nice to have a person who can turn themselves into a puppy. But sometimes you need the, oh no, we mean business now.
For sure.
So I did want to also kind of ask, because you kind of mentioned that. So again, as in a roundabout conversational way. Talk about like when it comes to like encounter design, you kind of said before that you kind of love kind of writing encounters that stand out, kind of evocative ones. I'm just I don't know if this is cheeky, but I'm just like, what's your secret?
Good villains, or good antagonists even, because I think so much of D&D, particularly, again, I've been at too many tables for too long, maybe. But particularly in previous editions, so much of D&D was let's go punch orcs in the face. And so what I love about a good encounter is that Green Goblin experience where he's going to drop for what's her name off of the Golden Gate Bridge if you move fast enough, unless you move fast enough. But you can't move fast enough.
So when you said Green Goblin, my mind just went to like just a goblin, but you Spider-Man Green Goblin.
No, yeah, Spider-Man Green Goblin. So having those villainous encounters where something is going to get lost in the process, but that doesn't mean you failed. That means the story continued. Yeah. And so whether it's the villain escaping in a puff of smoke, or whether it's you beat them, but the MacGuffin isn't what you thought it was, or whether you're in a natural encounter and you're shipwrecked on an island and you have no idea where you are, but that island's full of some kind of bizarro magical resource you've never encountered before. To me, and then what? In improv they talk about yes and those yes ands are what build encounters for me. My goal with everything that I'm writing is to give the DM enough ideas that they want to keep writing past me. Because everybody that's running a campaign is writing their campaign as they're going, whether they're doing it off the cuff or with a guidebook structure. There's always that amount of ad lib and always that extra. And so I want my ideas to bubble more ideas out. And so I usually start with one idea that's already just ridiculous, and then bubble it over with 3 or 4 what ifs, and then try to focus in on what of those is going to lead to further storytelling past that.
Because no, 100%, I think, and I think what they kind of like good encounters again. Like if you think about what the 5e kind of suggests, like was it players should be having like 6 to 7 encounters on a day, which I'm sure most people aren't kind of running. It's kind of like it not to the same extent. So you want the encounters that you want the encounters that they're having to kind of have like impact and kind of and I like the idea, like especially the kind of the what if and the yes and is the fact that they allow you to kind of allude to like a bigger world. Like I think it is easy for players to just assume that again the world revolves around them because it in some way it quite literally does. The world is designed for the players, but to kind of allude to like like there is kind of like I don't know like one of my favorite encounters that I've written is one where there is a ogre wading through a river chasing an alligator with a box in its mouth. And it's just because I can't remember what it's that point where I can't remember what I put in the box, but it's something interesting. Like it doesn't really matter what you put in the box.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what's in the box. It's a great image.
Yeah, and it's the idea of like, okay, well, why, what's happened before to lead to this series of events? Like, why does the ogre value whatever's inside the box? What happens if the ogre gets the box? What happens if the crocodile gets away with the box? And then it kind of extends from there. I guess to kind of throw the question back to you is like, do you have like an encounter that kind of stands out? Like, is like what's your Green Goblin encounter? Like the equivalent?
Okay. Oh goodness, this is gonna take some context. Okay.
Yeah, I guess also another thing is that it is kind of like it's like picking children.
Right, that too. So comets and cockpits. Again, Daylight Productions, Cam Day stuff. There's these little guys called sporiers, which are similar but legally distinct from the mushroom guys that they just threw in the new Dungeons and Dragons Feywild book. But they're these little mushroom guys of moderate intelligence who are they're kind of like native spirits to this giant planet.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're very shy, they're very distant.
Yeah.
Normally. And so my adventure is built around this guy that's experimenting with all kinds of mad science weather stuff because they're trying to grow crops in this world that's quite literally out to kill them. And one of his experiments, and this is about midway through the dungeon, so you've been wandering through at this point, you've figured out that this guy has a lab and some weird stuff going on. But it's a storage closet that they're all packed into super tight because they were trying to hide. And so when the characters open the storage closet, the characters are only in like a 10 by 10 room.
Yeah.
And so they are literally, it's a swarm of sporiers that they are suddenly surrounded by, and the sporiers are panicked. And so you have tiny fists pummeling you, trying to push you back out. And if you don't, you have 2 doors out. One door out back into the hallway back where you came from, fine. Yeah. The other door into the big boss fight.
Oh yeah, and so you come stumbling through.
Right, and so in playtesting, half the parties they come crashing through the door with a heap of spuriers panicking and running around them, and then there's this giant plant monster showdown right then and there. Lightning's flashing. It's time to go. Roll initiative, guys.
I must say, it is good. Yeah, it's nice to kind of have like the kind of the those situations where the players aren't as prepared as they could be. Because it kind of I've had this rant multiple times about the like doors just slow things down. I don't know what it is about adventurers and doors. But anything that kind of like throws them into the action. And again, encounters are kind of a good way to like, okay, if the players are being like a little bit passive, action's here. Like you need to do something, like whatever's going on. But crocodile's getting away. It's gonna eat that box or whatever. Or there's now I don't know why, but you said the little mushroom people. They make me think of from the Star Wars sequels with the little porks.
Oh yeah.
Just little cute little like mushroom equivalent versions of those.
Yep.
But no,
he has some great art for them too. I'm trying to remember. I have like a half have a mental image of it. But very similar.
I think what's also kind of awesome as well is like when it comes to like writing encounters is you do like have like an absolute range, because I mean like Comets and Cockpits as well is like a space D&D setting. You have again the what is it, Fallen like Camelot is again Arthurian kind of legend, and then obviously you've got like all the kind of D&C, so it sounds like you're quite comfortable like bouncing across like genres, across like
I am an unabashed genre writer. If you give me a genre to sink my teeth into, odds are I've already consumed media about it anyway. Yeah. And so I am going to lean so hard. And actually right now I'm working on Redwall stuff with Cam. That's the inspiration. I can't say Redwall, but Jacqueline is, it's the little anthropomorphic animals and mammals and stuff like that. And yeah, it's that genre to lean into that we all have that really strong association with. One of the things that I love about the 5e community, and I'm going to say the 5e community here, maybe a little more than 5e in print, is that a lot of us are not afraid to take this rule set and slap it on something oddball.
Yeah.
And that's, and I'm a GURPS kid. I'm Cypher System. I come from a lot of, let's try some weird tabletop game, guys.
Yeah.
But being able to have a little bit more codified language for that has been a lot of fun. Being able to say, okay, it's 5e, but with laser guns.
Yeah.
Or
with
squid gun. That's squid gun. Yeah.
I was gonna say part of it feels like again, it is a good chunk of it is just like Daylight Publications and Cam with like he had like Supers and Sorceries. He's also had like the Comets and Cockpits. It's just they're kind of going out there and just bringing all it, which again it's fantastic. I think it kind of again it's just nice.
Yeah, it's fun. It's not something, and I mean, part of it speaks to the structure of 5e. I think that they definitely built things in such a way that we can do that. And at the end of the day, D&D is still a combat system more than a storytelling system in a lot of chunks. But the people wanting to tell stories are going to tell those stories anyway. Yeah. And to me, the rules either enable. Okay, I say to me at my table, the rules either enable the story or they get out of the way. So it's very much a case of if you're comfortable in 5e, 5e. Here's this thing that can do 5e in space. Let's do 5e in space. Yeah. Sure. There's so many people that 5e has been their first tabletop encounter. It's their first system, and being able to introduce them to different ways to adventure through 5e is a great first step.
Yeah, and bit by bit, again, as you kind of diverge from the the was it swords and magic kind of D&D core, bit by bit you're like, oh, okay, well, we're in space now, so let's incorporate this space system from another game. And then bit by bit, you slowly kind of like it, just because again it was easier to kind of like, well, okay, this doesn't, again, 5e just isn't designed to deal with these kind of situations, or like how you breathe in space, or or how you deal with like an air decompression, or mainly just space stuff, I think. But yeah, it's nice to kind of have those kind of like solutions kind of come by. I did want to ask as well, if you don't mind kind of talking to it about like the nature of like some of the sensitivity kind of work that you do.
Okay, so I do accessibility, not sensitivity.
Sorry, yes.
I am clearly not the best reference for sensitivity reading. No, accessibility. So my background is in technical writing, technical communications. And so even as far back as college, which we're not going to talk about the year on, I was at least baseline familiar with how to prepare a PDF for screen readers and contrast and things like that. And so I got the opportunity through James Introcaso to do that for Arcadia, to which I said, yes, absolutely, yes, please, yes, and I've also done it now for Kingdoms of Warfare, the upcoming book, big book of theirs, and it's it's important to me personally, just because I've played at a lot of tables with a lot of people at very different skill levels. And I don't want a wall of text to be the thing that keeps somebody from having the fun that they want to have.
Yeah.
And so if I can take what are, to me, fairly simple steps, like there's some work, I'm not going to lie, it's work, but it's clearly measurable, objective, this worked or it didn't work.
Yeah.
If I can take that PDF and make it work for more people, then I mean, how can I not?
No,
like
100%. I think like that it's kind of like the possibility of like there's if these kind of barriers to accessibility are there, and there are steps to kind of prevent those, you should kind of do your best to kind of go about kind of breaking them down.
Yep.
Kind of to build on from that, then I guess like so with when it comes to like creating like PDFs and stuff like that, what would you say are like the most common, like is it literally just like the transference of PDF to screen to text? Sometimes there are kind of like, because I'm aware of some issues, but not necessarily to the same level.
Right. So screen reader's the main one. That's not necessarily the main one, but the easiest one. So when you're preparing a PDF for a screen reader, and again, I am completely and totally like 110% bound to Adobe for life. Adobe's my Warlock patron. It's a deal I can't get out of it. They have my subscription. They know where to find me. Yeah. But when working in Acrobat, you can manage your tags and your read order. And then that's just like literally how that PDF reader is going to read it back to you. And then making sure that you have alt text, just like on Twitter, including your alt text for your images. And then that's kind of where the cut and dry ends. From there, you get into some more complicated questions like, how's the contrast on this? Is that sans serif font too funky? Did we put 900 words on this page when 300 would do? And so like you start getting into editorial there, even because there's a word density, right? There's and again, Arcadia is phenomenal about that. I will absolutely sing the praises of their entire team, because the balance between art and text on everything that I've done has just been spot on. But there is a balance that you want to shoot for. And sometimes, particularly those of us that grew up on previous editions, there's a tendency toward denser text and toward the 3-column 8-point font layout that we don't have to be bound to anymore. And page counts are a thing, print production is a thing for some of us, but a lot of the times we're making PDFs. We make these PDFs as useful as we're able to.
I think again, kind of leaning into the digital format that we now is kind of so prevalent. So I actually had a quick question about when it comes to like alt text on art, because I remember I was listening to the podcast with Greg Tito and Shelley Mazzanoble. I forgot the official name for it. But either way, they were talking about how D&D Beyond were going through the process of implementing kind of like alt text for the entire kind of monster manual. But so when it comes to like alt text for images, is that something that necessarily you're going in and writing, or is that interesting?
So in my case, yes, and in all cases, not always. And that's something that like I kind of check back and forth with too. Right now, that's something that I'm writing. So a mage stands arms outstretched at the edge of a cliff with lightning surrounding him, something like that. I'm usually just putting that in as part of my consulting gig. I imagine
I imagine that's also got to be kind of like almost like an interesting writing exercise in itself.
Because sometimes you're reading 3 or 4 pages to make sure that you understand that this isn't just a mage. This is a red mage of Thay, and it's not just a red mage of Thay. It's a red mage of Thay who's made a particular warlock deal.
Yeah.
You know, like there's that contextualization, because somebody with a screen reader, somebody who is visually disabled, is going to get that block of text that you wrote for the image.
Yeah.
In Situo, they're going to get it as they're reading along. And so if you're not capturing the intent of the artist, then you're just making noise.
Yeah. No, I no. Again, it's kind of fascinating, and again, I think again, it's something that again, I hope more kind of creators are kind of thinking more about kind of PDF accessibility, and again, I can only thank you for kind of being so kind of open to kind of chatting about it, because like it's I mean, like we should kind of be kind of heralding these kind of practices.
I'll shamelessly put it out on here too. Anyone that's following me on Discord, following me on Twitter, whatever, reach out if you have questions. I am very glad to look at your PDF and say, oh, those tags are backwards, but you did great here. Yeah. Stuff like that. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm consulting. I love consulting. Don't get me wrong. I like eating, but I also want to make sure that you know, if you're a creator too, if you're making things, then let's make things as usable as possible. And that's something that we all can learn on. And I mean, I'm learning a ton. I've learned a lot about that this past 6 months, but at the same time, you know, that's something where I can pass on that knowledge. Everyone can make things a little bit easier on everyone else, and the whole group benefits.
Yeah. No, because I mean, like anybody who wants to play should be able to play, and that's, you know, bit by bit.
Yep.
Yeah, nice. So then I'm trying to think of a smooth tangent, but I'm just going to go. There are no smooth tangents in the podcast. So to kind of segue back to your writing as a whole, I'm curious then if you kind of have like a set way that you kind of your ideas kind of come to you, or is it kind of still very much like stemming from the when you're sat in the DM chair, or?
So, and again, I think it's important to note that in a lot of ways, my DM writing, like when I'm actually running a game, so much more of that stems from the players. Because if you're a GM writing encounters for your table, you're going to get so much fodder from that backstory. You're going to get so many little things. But when I'm writing for the guild, a lot of my inspiration comes from whatever the climax is, from whatever the big fight at the end is. Like again, I keep bouncing to that adventure, the comments and cockpits.
Little mushroom babies.
Yeah. The whole pastiche is Little Shop of Horrors. The big thing at the end is Audrey too. And so I knew going in, okay, I'm doing Little Shop of Horrors, but in Crazy Space Planet, because come on, I'm going to do Little Shop of Horrors with these crazy space plants that you made. And Cam's like, that's great. How? And so like that's the okay. So again, I said earlier, unabashed genre writer, right?
I mean that's kind of half the fun to have that kind of like, we're like, okay, this at this core, this is the motivation, and then you can kind of see of like, okay, well, how do we systemize some of this, or like what parts do we kind of want to and it just ends in a giant plant monster.
so working my way backwards from, okay, so how did this guy get Audrey to, you know, are we doing the love story? We didn't do the love story. Okay. Are we doing like full on mad scientist Dr. Jekyll here? And so working my way back to there to get to a place where the players are going to get sent out by the commissioner to go find out what's going on with this guy's crazy lab. That's the process, kind of I guess, start at the end, contextualize it, and then build the hook last.
And I must admit, I think again, it's kind of natural kind of gravitate towards essentially like set pieces. The kind of because I mean the set pieces are the why, that those are the cool parts in which the players are kind of get engaged in, and that's kind of like all roads point to the set piece. It's just like that's how you kind of work towards it. So you have that satisfying payoff. It doesn't come out of the blue. It's kind of like the players like, we deserve this victory because, you know, they've done all the bits and bobs.
Yeah. My not just another monster book adventure. Again, it's that set piece. It's the tide didn't come in.
Oh,
Like,
that's not good.
oh no, why didn't the tide come in? Like you get that something that crazy, and the rest of it comes together.
No, I must admit, so I've done a similar thing where like the kind of focus of one of the adventures I've been writing on is a monastery where there are kind of like runes of silence kind of scattered throughout. So like it's just a dungeon where the players are essentially penalized for like speaking. And that was kind of the focus of it, because I was thinking like, you know what, for like it would be horrible for an entire campaign, but for a one shot, for the players to try and adapt in an environment where they can't kind of communicate, and then it kind of shapes the way they kind of have to kind of work together, which was kind of like that again, it's working backwards from that point of like, okay, well, now that we have this thing that kind of, you know, potentially means that wizards aren't going to have such a good time, how can we kind of again reward the players kind of exploring to try and maybe find ways that they can kind of bypass or like, you know, cast their spells, or like how can we put in creatures that kind of prey on the fact that everyone's quiet and kind of vice versa. Unfortunately, it's not based on a particular film reference, but it's the same kind of concept.
That's good.
Yeah. So I guess because building on from that then. So if kind of again kind of what you kind of like focus towards and kind of working backwards from these kind of set pieces, would you say that's like your favorite part of the process? And if not, what's on the other side of the coin? What is your like least favorite part of the process?
Sure. So favorite part of the process is actually not exactly that. Like for solo work, maybe.
Yeah.
But I am a sucker for collaborations. They're not the most profitable. I can certainly show you some numbers there, but from a enjoyment standpoint, there's a moment in every collaboration, and Cam's really good about facilitating these moments, actually, where everybody realizes how their part connects into the next part. And like I'm doing bats, and bats are couriers, but bats are couriers for these two other kingdoms that are at war with each other, and some bats serve them and some bats serve them. So nobody really trusts the bats because nobody knows who the bats are working for.
Yeah.
That type of, again, going back, I guess, to the improv yes and, those types of yes and moments where the entire room is suddenly building something so much bigger than what I had already built in my head.
Yeah.
I live for that. I love seeing that come together in a class.
And I must admit, I think they really do. They really come to life when you're working together on like a setting guide or a project of that kind of like scale, where again, it isn't necessarily feasible for one person to do all the kind of world building, that it becomes kind of layers of like, oh, I've done this kind of thing. And then bit by bit, it's like, oh, okay, we can kind of make this like a quilt. It's like a knitted quilt. It's like bit by bit, all the kind of the squares come together, and it's like, oh, we can step back and see the whole thing. I guess, and I must admit, there is definitely something about like I was gonna call myself like an energy vampire, but in terms of like in like collaborations, like the energy boost that kind of, I don't know, every time you have those moments where everything kind of clicks, or just kind of, you know, being able to kind of bounce ideas of people, like you type something and then 3 people are typing like, yo, and then you're like, clearly we're onto something here.
It just evolves into GIFs after a few minutes. Yep.
Sure. I think, you know, that's when you know you have a good idea, when someone responds with a GIF and not words.
That's it. Yep, that's it. Absolutely.
So
the least favorite. So there's that step, I guess, between layout and conclusion, where inevitably a stat block is wrong, or Wizards of the Coast released a new format that includes efficiency bonuses.
Yeah, I imagine that was a process that probably irked a few layout artists worldwide.
I mean, it's and don't get me wrong, it's important to do. I'm actually really excited to have the proficiency bonus in there because we were all calculating that anyway.
Yeah.
But having that moment of, oh no, our baby that we've loved for 6 months of writing together needs another 2 weeks because we're going to have to add a page and a half because we left out this major chunk. That it inevitably, and this might be the layout guy complaining a little much, but inevitably that happens when you're holding the PDF you think was finalized.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's just you or if it's you and 20 people. It's always that last proof where you're like, oh no, that can't go out like that.
I must admit, but I think it is like again, I'm so impressed with like kind of like the some of these huge kind of collaborations out there. And I don't envy any kind of like project manager trying to keep track of, because I'm no doubtedly like throughout a project, you probably like, if you have like, I don't know, like 10 people on a project, you probably have like, I'm going to hazard a guess, 20 different Word documents. I'm just going to go like that's probably like even like a small estimate of like, you know, what you have going on. And then it's like, okay, is this the updated version? Is this the edited version? Is this the edited, like responded version? And
certain project that I worked on had over 70 Word docs attached to it before it got to its completion. Yeah.
Wow.
That one was 20 odd collaborators. It was enormous. Yeah.
So basically, I feel like you're the person unfortunately on the receiving end of most of the.
Yep. But I mean, good templates. Yeah. We have some phenomenal editors and the DMsGuild group that and really the adventure templates too. There's a handful of really good adventure templates and class templates that seem to be circulating in Google Docs a lot more these last few months. But yeah, the importance of a standardized template cannot be understated.
No, yeah, 100%. Like, yeah, again, what I was about to go and say, if like it's I nice like for some adventures I have my own kind of template that I kind of go away and bit by bit I've kind of like, I guess, like Frankenstein monsters like section from adventures that I kind of like the layout for. When it comes to commission stuff, don't miss the layout. What you have is like, you know, treat it like gospel. it's yeah. Because I imagine again, like every now and then I imagine one little bit where it's just like, okay, it's just a little bit out of the template that we could kind of, but then when again it kind of conflates of like, oh, this is just not in the right format.
Oh no, is this addressing the reader? Is this addressing the DM? What kind of box does that text go into? Yeah. That's the
No, I get obviously, yeah. Like, I do like the kind of the conversations where I can kind of like chat to like again like a layout artist and just kind of get all the, because at the moment like my kind of pipeline is I kind of do like the layout myself, but then I know that what I do for layout. So basically, I don't have what is it, InDesign or anything like that. I use like a I guess I can only describe it as like a home brewery adjacent. Which yeah, but it's like, so it's like it's not home brewery, but it's like I'm doing all the coding stuff myself.
Okay.
Which it works for me. I you know, some of the documents I think are fairly pretty, but that's because like, again, I've just, I don't know if it's Stockholm syndrome. I've just this is how I started doing it, and now this is just how I do it from now on. It sounds like you're
the good news there is that if they're talking about accessibility, if it's HTML, it's already tagged.
Yeah.
Your H1s are H1s, your H2s are H2s.
Yeah. Oh no. So, and it generates all like, like I said, all my kind of like the hyperlinks for like all the kind of chapters and stuff like that. Oh, it does. Yeah, it does wonders with all that stuff.
That's it.
But yeah, no, it's I don't know. There's some days where I'm just like, I don't, why am I doing it this way? Why am I the projects where I've had the projects where I've had like the pleasure to like, I'm gonna get a layout. It's all, I don't know. I always enjoy it so much more because I'm not the one fighting with code or like a document anymore.
I'm a code wrangler by day. I do HTML and JavaScript at my day job. So yeah, you have my sympathies.
I'm glad. I don't know. I can't ask for sympathy too much because again, it's self-induced suffering. But yeah. So again, before I do try and get any more pity, talking about like design. Oh, you know what? Actually, I'm kind of keeping this on the kind of like layout trend. Is there like a particular kind of layout choice that you've kind of made, or like a particular page spread that you're kind of like quite proud of?
Oh goodness. I love the look of Memories of the Sea. I think of every, and again, Memories of the Sea was a solo book. I approached Ryan. I said, Ryan, this is amazing. Do you realize that you didn't have Anglo-Saxons if they didn't get to be Anglo? And so that was a solo book. That was me being a history nerd and wondering what the 8th century looks like if suddenly you drowned all of Europe in terrible boiling dark magic.
But it happens on occasion.
Yeah, so the layout for that, and so the layout approach to that I took, it's a lot of cool colors, it's a lot of blues, but it's made to look like a battered old book that's been just completely like awash in seawater, and so there's a lot of stains through it, and a lot of the images are they're saturated in. They look like they've bled through the page, or they're tearing off of the page, or things like that. And so of a lot of the ones that I've created, I think that one has kind of, and Celts takes a similar approach. Celts look more like an old book and less like an old book that you threw in the ocean. But both of those, I managed a little bit more unified design. I think I did better on it in Memories of the Sea, frankly. But both of those they have a more unified feel to them than I've managed in some subsequent ones.
But it kind of goes back to what you're saying, is like, again, the kind of layout is can also kind of carry the entire theme of the book,
right,
throughout and stuff like that. And again, it can convey things that, Memories of the Sea being all about a bunch of people kind of Europe kind of being buried under the ocean and stuff like that, and having the book kind of almost be a memory from that.
And it would be terrible of me to not mention Gilroy's Guide to Fae, because that's literally the whole pitch there. The art on Gilroy's Guide to Fae, Never Not DM brought to Kickstarter a couple of months ago, and the art is just phenomenal. It's made to be a hand-drawn journal, right? It's a script, and so we've got his handwritten script throughout it. But all the drawings are charcoal. They're all sketches charcoal, and there's like 4 to 6 of them per monster. Tons of really, really good art. We did a few spreads for samples, and I'm like, man, you are knocking this out of the park. These look great. What awesome showcases. And then I get like 30 more pieces of art. And I'm like, oh, yeah, the whole book.
Yeah.
So I'm getting ready. The art is finalizing on that, and I'm getting ready to go back to it and get the rest of the book laid out. And I cannot wait, because I've been seeing this bit by bit as it comes in, and every piece is just, claws coming out of the deep, or vine wrapped creatures. It's just so evocative.
I imagine it completes that picture of someone with a journal, maybe not again, not that I hate I imagine if there's a monster approaching, you don't really want to be like oh no, this is the best.
No, he's definitely sketching from way over there.
Yeah. Feel like a binocular, and there's got appearing up in the distance. But then I guess to kind of just capture it then, so to flip it on the question on its head, and just what about on a writing front? Has there been a particular encounter, or in particular design work that you're quite proud of?
So I mentioned the Melusine at the very beginning. I love her integration into that whole book. And so if you're playing in a Realmwarp media campaign, please stop listening.
Give the people listening just
So the whole story there is that in the traditional French story, the Melusine she tells her prince, hey, I'm going to be an awesome queen. It's going to be great. You'll have wonderful children. Everything will be great. Just leave me alone when I'm having bath time. Totally reasonable request. It's ignored. And so she's discovered to be this 2-tailed serpentine monster creature, and runs fleeing into the night. And then the legend kind of muddies from there in a lot of interesting ways, because her children, in a lot of continuing myths, her children are either like saviors and miraculous, or they're terrible monsters, or a bit of both.
Mhm.
She visits and keeps an eye, or protects, or maybe is like this haunting figure. And so in Memories of the Sea, I set this like a couple hundred years later.
Mhm.
And she's keeping an eye on her children, but she's been transformed by the experience to both hate the surface world and be completely obsessed with it. And so she has a spy network spread out across the surface world using these little touchstones, and they all report back to her. And she runs this gigantic, like, intrigue-laced thing where she's keeping an eye on her descendants, and she's keeping an eye on the nobility and the royalty. And she's gotten sucked along with the rest of Camelot to this bizarro pocket dimension.
Yeah.
And so she's, depending on how your party plays it, she can be a super powerful ally. She's certainly an amazing resource for information, but she's also absolutely going to murder you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so having a nigh immortal creature that's that layered with history is huge to me, because as a dungeon master, I can spin that however I need to. She's an antagonist that pops up adjacent to your villain, or a contagonist that's going to drive you to some particular part that you haven't uncovered yet.
I think that's one of my favorite approach of like kind of writing like NPCs, is the ones that can be both an ally and a villain, depending on how the players kind of approach them. Because again, that's I think like one, again, it's just it's beautiful design. It's just but then it's also that kind of like, from like a utility sense, it's like it is what anything the DM needs. And like I said, if like in, during your like Fallen Camelot campaign, you're just like, damn, we just don't have enough information. If only there was, like, I don't know, a spy network of touchstones. No, yeah, and I must admit, when anytime you get the chance to kind of dip deep into kind of like lore, or like like legends and stuff, it's fascinating, and like, particularly with like Arthurian and kind of like Camelot, there's so many like interpretations, and you kind of have freedom to like, oh yeah, I like this, yeah.
I love cherry picking from it. That's what drew me to Realmwarp's entire Cities of Myth series, is that we're shaping these into that cohesive sequence.
Yeah.
It's same with Atlantis and Algartha. There's so much. There's just so rich a vein to tap there.
Hot damn. Well, then, and I guess as like my final kind of question about your like creative process as a whole, then, is over everything you've done, again, with all these kind of projects and something, is there like a particular lesson that you can kind of point to that you wish you learned sooner?
Time management.
that's fair. No, yeah.
No, I mean, I've gotten to the point in the last few months where I have to learn to say, that's amazing, but I'm going to slow this down, or that I can't wait to see what you make, but that one's not for me. Yeah. I am very guilty of being so excited because everybody's making such awesome stuff. Like every week there's a call for writers on something that looks incredible.
Yeah, the FOMO is real.
Right. And so developing the actual discipline to say, that looks great. My 20 hours a week filled up on Tuesday. like we need to, whoa there. So learning that lesson, I think, is an ongoing development, as a couple of layout projects that I'm working on now would attest to. I
think the problem is it does ebb and flow. It's always hard to kind of that kind of consistency is always the weird bit, because like every now and then that you would have the part where like I have 7 projects right now, and this really cool pitch is coming up, and then 3 to 4 months later you might be like, finally I've got everything off my plate, and then it's like, where's the project at?
Yeah. I think, yeah, I thought I could manage a month at a time. What I've learned is that I have to manage a quarter at a time. Yeah. And even managing a quarter at a time, sometimes there's definitely a transition period where it's looking like, So all of that's December 1st, you say. And then December, I know how Christmas is going to look. And then December 31st, okay, so we got a couple of weeks off, and then I'm going to be looking around January 1, like, all right, so which 5 am I doing at once?
yeah. History is doomed to repeat itself. We are as creatives, we're just cursed. The deadlines are ever looming and never ending.
I love them. I love every one of them.
Yeah, no, 100%. So then talking about like, I guess project management and like choosing who to kind of collaborate with and all that. That's kind of that's part of the tabletop RPG community. So I guess to kind of extend it a little bit further, like who would you say are like some of the sources of inspiration in the community as a whole?
Oh my goodness. So broader inspiration, definitely I have to brag on MCDM. Everything they do is consistently, like, honestly above publication level in some standards, like above and beyond. They are creating incredible stuff. Underground Oracle, they just and then put out just such a steady stream. That's I think a lot of my inspiration comes from Twitter indirectly, but then also from the names that you see over and over again from these people that are delivering on Patreon. And I'm excited. I won't spoil things, but there's other people coming to Patreon next year that I'm really excited to see, because these people that are creating content on the regular for their subscribers in a deliverable, digestible format. Like, I know my schedule, I know my life, I know even if I got a backlog, that's a big proposal.
Like the level of consistency is mind-boggling.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the ability to consistently deliver super high quality content is just huge. And that's what gets me opening up my Twitter in the morning and saying, oh wow, that's really awesome. What have I done today?
It's open to it, see some cool stuff, and then proceed with doom scrolling for 20 to 30 minutes.
Oh no.
I don't know how else I'm supposed to start my day. It's a routine at this point.
For sure.
No, awesome. I 100%. And I think again, it's fascinating to kind of see the way people kind of adapt to again, like whether it's a case of like they release one thing a year and by golly is it like one hell of a release, that kind of, or they have that kind of again weekly stream of content, which is all of kind of amazing. It's again it's all kind of fascinating and amazing to kind of see in its own way. But then I think about, I guess, releasing things as a whole, more importantly, Chris, we have done it. It's been an hour. We've both managed to survive. We haven't been attacked by any deer or animals, and
no cows have entered the frame.
That's all we can hope for. It would be more weird if they came in my frame, but again, I don't want to rule anything out. But no, I don't want to end the podcast without hearing some of the cool stuff that you're working on, and kind of more importantly, where can people kind of stay up to date?
Sure. Linktree/Chris Hopper. I just use my name as much as possible, make things easy. Except that guy on Twitter, he's a preacher or something. Not
like Chris Hopper 1.
But currently on Kickstarter, I am doing layout for Christian Zoic's Amazing Encounters in Places. T.A. Gray's Fey Encounters launches next week. And then we've had Putagarth on hold. So those two are coming up. The Not Just Another Monster Quest series, I will shamelessly plug, even though I am way down in volume 6. Just I love the idea of it. I absolutely love all the content I've seen for it so far. So I'm coming up in that, I don't know, January, February. I'm not sure. I think we're working on volume 3 right now.
I mean, eventually, it's just like keep watching. Like everyone now needs to watch. Everyone needs to look at like Not Another Monster. Like wait. There's Chris. Hey.
And anything that Realmwarp Media is putting out, keep an eye on Realmwarp Media as well.
Oh yeah, I know a fantastic group of people. Yeah, you got like a bunch of really cool stuff. No, well, I honestly, again, Chris, thank you so much for taking some time. This is delightful. Again, it's got a double whammy, because not only did we get to talk about adventure stuff, we got to speak about a triple whammy. geez, accessibility. We got to talk about layout. We got to talk about adventure. Like, wow, it's all good fun.
Glad to have brought everything that I could to the table.
If anything, probably to do you justice, I should have had you on like 3 times in a row. That way we could have, you could have worn like a different hat, maybe like a mustache of like, hello, I'm.
We'll come back in a few weeks from the back porch.
And so entirely new person. But no, other than that, I've been Matthew Whitby. You can find me at Whitby Writes. I don't have anything coming out immediately that I'm aware of, but I've been wrong before. so that's just how I'm going to leave things. But I am going to ask my favorite question, which is, Chris, how do you end a podcast?
All right. So I have to preface this with, I don't listen to podcasts. So I'm excited to be on this one, but I had to do podcast background research because I'm not much of a podcast person. But what I figured out about podcasts is that it has to end with a bumper that you recorded 3 or 4 years ago in drastically different quality.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I will
follow, and subscribe for more.
I will record an outro, and I will essentially put the audio through like a blender. So enjoy. I recorded this maybe 3 years ago. Maybe 3 years ago. Maybe from 1973. Who knows? This episode of Dungeon Master's Goat House was brought to you by me. I can't keep a straight face, but from the smooth sound of jazz as well. Be sure to check out my newest album, Longsaddle, and be sure to tune in next week for my next album. I don't really know what I'm doing. I just don't.